Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing this evening? I am in a super good mood this evening. I am very calm, very relaxed. Took a nap this evening with the dogs, and I must have left the door kind of a little bit cracked open because I woke up and Tucker was still in bed with me, but Boo Radley had gone down to his house in the basement and went to sleep down there. He likes to do that sometimes. He likes to be just by himself down in his house. We leave the door of their, it's like a crate, but we leave the door of their house open. And sometimes we'll be sitting there watching TV and I'll look at Alex and I'll be like, where's Boo Radley? And he's like, I don't know, he probably went down to his house. Boo Radley loves his little house down there. And then I'll go down there and I'll be like, Boo Radley, Boo Radley. I'm like, and I can hear him kind of, moving around a little bit when I walk down there, and he's always just sleeping on his little blanket inside his house. He likes it in there. So I had a really good evening, very relaxing. Didn't really do anything big deal. Alex went over to a girlfriend's house and they had a taco bar, homemade tacos. And I watched, I think it was 4 or 5 episodes back to back of Family Feud. I watched this whole, I think it was the tail end of the first episode, and then I watched the next 4 episodes. But I watched this family win 5 episodes back to back. I was rooting for them by the end. We were rooting for you. I was almost kind of teary-eyed when they won the 5th episode and they got the car. Isn't that so silly? I love Family Feud so much, and I love Game Show Network. It's probably my favorite channel on cable. I just feel it's such a happy channel, happy, I don't know, it's just source of entertainment in this world of sadness and misery. Sometimes it's kind of when I get on Twitter and it's just so much toxicity and whatever, and then I turn on Game Show Network and it just makes me happy. So I love Game Show Network, and there's a couple shows I watch on there, if whatever's on, I'll watch. But I really love Family Feud. That's my favorite. And I grew up watching game shows. I can remember when Game Show Network first came out, and I was obsessed. And I think at first it just wasn't basic cable. You had to am I wrong? But you had to have some kind of special cable to have it, and I wanted it so bad. I was so excited for it because I loved game shows when I was a kid. I just loved them. I think my mom called them quiz shows, but I loved game shows. And I watched Price is Right. That was probably one of the big ones. I remember watching it with my grandma, my mom's mom, but I also watched it on my own, when I was at home. And I can remember when we would have snow days and stuff, because when the winters were bad in Indiana when I was growing up, we would have 3 or 4 days in a row where we had snow days. And I can remember getting up just to watch game shows, because they would start at there'd be some talk shows in the morning, and then there would be game shows that would start at 10 o'clock. And I would watch, and then there were some in the afternoon too. I feel Pyramid was on in the afternoon, and I would watch Pyramid. I know Price is Right was on from 11 to 12, and then it was the news. And I watched Tale of the Century. I watched Supermarket Sweep sometimes, but I feel that was later. I feel that came out maybe when I was a little bit older. My mom and I always watched Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. We loved those two. And I feel they were on from 7 to 8 o'clock. We would eat dinner and we would watch from 6 to 7. We would watch Little House on the Prairie. And then we would, which was on Channel 4, which was a local access station out of Bloomington, Indiana, which is where Indiana University is. Our local access stations in Indiana were 4 and 59. I mean, we had local stations like ABC, CBS, and NBC. Those were 6, 8, and 13. But then we had, I don't know how I remember all this. I really don't know how I remember any of this, but it's just, this is where I have this crazy memory, right? Like, I remember my first phone number when I was growing up as a kid, and my address, and all of that stuff. And so anyway, Channel 4 and Channel 59, Channel 20 and Channel 40. Channel 20 was, I think, PBS, and Channel 40, I don't remember what it was, but it had like Channel 20 was like Sesame Street, you would watch on that, you know, stuff like that. Channel 40 was like really, really local access, but Channel 4 was out of Bloomington, and they would play like old movies and stuff as well. They always play Little House on the Prairie, and so that's where we watched Little House on the Prairie. But then from 7 to 8 was, I feel like it was Wheel of Fortune and then Jeopardy, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. My mom and I would shout out answers at the TV. I can see her. I can see her in the kitchen, like I'm sitting there. And I think maybe I did homework during that hour too, which is probably why I got such good grades. That was a joke. That's sarcasm if you can't tell. Because I think my mom was more concerned with me, like, playing Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune with her than she was whether or not I got good grades or not. But I can see my mom there, you know, and she would make a cup of coffee, and then she would sit at the end of the table and drink a cup of coffee. And first she would do like the dishes, and she would clean up the kitchen really quick, and then she would sit there and drink a cup of coffee and the TV was at the end of the kitchen table. We had this like wood block kitchen table. And so I would sit with my back to the window, and then she would sit with her chair at one end, and then we had a chair on the other side. Well, actually, the other end and the chair on that side, we didn't have chairs there because it was just kind of like the two of us, so that was all we did. But and she would like leave notes for me on that table if there were things I needed, like, you know, if I had an appointment or take out the trash or whatever, you know, those kinds of things. But I remember we would watch those shows. And then I also watched on Friday night, this was like when I was really young, I would watch the Newlywed Game. In fact, I remember my mom, one of her sorority sisters, that she was like, they both went through divorces at the same time, and so we hung out and did stuff with her a lot. And she was like one of my mom's like diehard friends. And so her older daughter, who was like a year ahead of me, I think she was 2 years ahead of me, we would like play tennis and stuff like that. And like in the summers, my mom's friend like worked full time, so we would like for a whole weekend, like her daughters would like stay with us or something, you know, and then, you know, she would come over there in the evenings for dinner or whatever. But they would like, we would go swimming and go play tennis and stuff like that. And you know, my mom would entertain them to some degree, so they didn't just have to be like, you know, not doing anything. And I can remember the older daughter and I and my mom would sit there on our porch that we had that was like glassed in porch, and we would sit, you know, on the couch. We would watch the Newlywed Game, and we would shout out answers. And we would have like popcorn and soda and stuff, you know. And then we would watch Sammy Terry, and Sammy Terry was this guy that dressed up kind of like, he was on local access to channel, I think he was Channel 4, and he would dress up like Dracula, and there was like these like, you know, plastic spiders that would hang from the ceiling. One of them was called something, I can't remember. He passed away years ago, and his son still dresses up like him, and it's kind of like a big deal here in town still. But anyway, Sammy Terry, like if you're from Indianapolis and you're my age, you know who Sammy Terry was. And he would host this show on Friday night. It's the Sammy Terry show, and he would play like old movies, like 2 old movies back to back, and it would be like The Blob, you know, and The Fly or something like that. It was like those kind of old movies, you know, The Wax Museum. And we would get so scared, you know, and then he would come on during the commercials and he would tell all these like corny jokes and stuff like that. But we loved it. Oh my God, we loved it so much. TV's not the way that it used to be, you know? I mean, now we live in a world of like streaming and binge watching shows, and I just finished, before I left, Hell in the Heartland, the documentary about the book for a true crime book club this month, which tomorrow is our live book discussion at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't know if this will be up in time for that, but yeah, I just finished the documentary. It was like 4 parts on HBO Max. It was really good. It follows the book very, very closely. But Jax Miller, the author of Hell in the Heartland, is like, she's like the main part of all of it. So it's cool if you read the book, because, you know, and I interact with her a lot. I just actually DM'd her tonight, and I was like, we were kind of talking a little bit back and forth. But, you know, TV was different back then. I think also, you know, like, there was cable, but not everybody had cable. People rented movies, but it was still kind of a special thing to rent movies. You know, it wasn't like, it wasn't just like go to the Redbox and pay $1. I mean, it was like, you know, you went to a video store and you picked out movies, and, you know, you couldn't wait until they showed like some movie on TV, you know, or it came to cable. Like, that was a big deal back then, you know? I mean, it's nothing like it is today. It's like changed so much. Like, that's one thing that I really, like, we talk about like changes that occur over time. Like, you know, when I was a kid and my parents would be like, I remember when milk was 50 cents and a loaf of bread was 25. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But it's like some of the things that happen like over time, you don't even realize that they're happening while they're happening, you know? And I have to say that, like, obviously entertainment is one of them. But, like, as far as, like, movies, like, in the movie theater, I mean, other than you can't go to any movies right now, I was driving by a movie theater the other day. Are movie theaters in your area open? Like, movie theaters in our area are still not open. And I was like, movie theaters like AMC and United Artists and stuff, they've had to have taken, you know, in IMAX, they've had to have taken such a huge blow that I can't imagine how movie theaters are going to survive through this. I really do not understand how they're going to survive through this. I mean, they've been just closed down, you know, completely. And, I mean, can you even imagine a world where there's no movie theaters? I mean, I guess we have had a world where there is no movie theaters for the last year. But, I mean, going forward, we're 10 years from now, we'd be like, explaining to like the younger generation what movie theaters were. Like, that's, you know, anyway, I don't feel like movie theaters, this is water, by the way, that I'm drinking in my Pride cup. I don't feel like movie theaters have changed a whole lot. I feel like the prices have, incredibly, but movie theaters were always expensive, you know? There would be like cheap matinees and things like that that you could go to, or cheaper movie theaters. Like, there was one by us called Lowe's Norgate, and it was like, you know, you could go on Friday nights for like $2 a ticket and things like that. But like popcorn and all that candy and all that stuff, it's always been expensive at the movie theaters, right? So, but I don't feel like the experience of going to the movie theater, other than like the special effects and IMAX and all that kind of stuff, I feel like that has changed it. But the actual experience of going to it hasn't changed it. The only thing I think is totally different is like being able to pick your seats online, and the big wonderful seats, like the recliner chairs, you know? Those are the two things. But other than that, it really hasn't changed a whole lot, you know? I mean, in Indianapolis, we still have movie theaters that are like, you drive to the movie theater and watch it on a screen outside. Very much like it was 20 years ago, you know, or 35, 40 years ago. But TV has really changed. I mean, there's still like the channels and, you know, all this. But, you know, most of the people that I know, like when we tell them that we have cable, they're like, what cable do you have? And I'm like, we have like every channel that there's possible. They're like, you still have cable? I'm like, yeah, we still have cable, and we watch a lot of things too. Like, I always have some movie on in the background, but I could do that with Netflix, you know? I know it's probably stupid, but I was also the last person to have like an inline telephone. And that was because I just kept my mom's line open, because I was like, if somebody's trying to get a hold of my mom, like, in that first year that she had passed away, and you know what? I don't think, like, one person called that whole year. I was just talking about that on here not too long ago. But I feel like TV has changed so much. It's like, it all streams now, you know? Which I enjoy. But I can remember back in the day, I mean, I guess I'm still this way with, like, the Real Housewives and, like, RuPaul. Like, RuPaul, definitely. I'm always like, oh, I can't wait till Friday night when RuPaul's on. But, like, you know, do you remember when TiVo came around and now we have DVR? I mean, now we, like, just... I always, like, say to Alex, like, what do I say? Like, what he always says, are you going to put it on a videotape? I think I say record it. Like, are you, not record it, but are you going to tape it? Oh, I always say, is the show being taped? And he said, on a videotape, on a VCR tape. I'm like, you're such an ass. But do you remember when you would set your VCR to, like, tape something? And he just laughs and laughs. He thinks it's so funny. And I'm like, okay, I'm old, I get it, right? But I'm really not even that old. So, but the, you know, then I remember TiVo came around, and then it's like, it's just, now you just go in there and just do, you know, you record something. But back in the day, I would be so, like, now, so now if, like, RuPaul comes out on Friday, we might watch it on Tuesday or something, you know? But back in the day, I was so excited, you know? Like, oh my God, it's, you know, Friday night, and we're gonna, or Saturday night, and we're gonna watch Love Boat and, Fantasy Island back to back, you know? And Friday night was Dynasty, Dallas, and Charlie's Angels or something. Those were my 5 shows when I was growing up. I loved those shows. I loved Dallas and Dynasty. I can still hear those songs in my head. And especially the song for Dynasty. Alex, is it still on? I think he watches Dynasty, the what do you call it? The remake of it. I feel like he watches it now. He did a couple years ago. I don't know if it's still on or not. But anyway, the reboot. Now we have reboots of all these shows, you know. Can you imagine when we were growing up, there was, like, reboots of Peyton Place or something? Reboot of Father Knows Best. That's called they lack originality and creativity because they can't come up with a good enough show that anybody will get interested in. So we have to come up with... We have to reboot a show that was, it's like, please, there's some shows that I'm like, please do not reboot. Like, please do not reboot Alf, okay? We don't need, and I loved Mork and Mindy, but we don't need to bring back Mork and Mindy, okay? Did you guys watch that show? Oh my God, I loved that show so much. I had the suspenders and everything, and I used to wear them, like, in 1st grade. What other shows did I watch? I loved Facts is Life, or Facts is Life. Facts of Life. You take the good, you take the bad, you take it all, and then you have the facts of life. I loved Facts of Life. I never really watched Square Pegs. Kind of, maybe, a little bit before, but I feel like Square Pegs was a little bit before my time. And then, what else did I watch? I watched... I can't remember. Designing Women, Roseanne, that was later in high school. You know, when I was in high school, honestly, I didn't really watch a lot of TV. I watched a lot of movies. I was very artsy. So I watched a lot of older movies when I was in high school. And I listened to a lot of music. And I sewed a lot, and I hung out with my friends. That's my good duties. I mean, that's what I did in high school. I didn't watch a lot of TV. I mean, I can remember going over to my friend's house and watching like 120 Minutes or something like that on, or they would, you know, tape it. They would tape, and honestly, tape it on a VCR tape. But they would tape it, you know. 120 Minutes was like all alternative music on MTV. Now, music videos we used to watch a lot of in high school. There really aren't any music videos anymore on MTV. It's kind of weird. Oh my God, do you know what I saw the other day? I saw an ad. I don't know when it's on, but I really want to watch it. It's with the original cast, like Heather and I think that's the only one whose name I remember. But, oh, Eric, is that his name? I can't remember their names. The original cast of the very first Real World. Heather, Becky, Eric. I was obsessed with that show, you guys. Like, absolutely obsessed. Oh, 90210 I watched, but that didn't come on until after I was out of high school. I was obsessed with The Real World, the first season. And that and 90210 must have come out between when I graduated from high school and when I got sober. Because I can remember drinking with those shows. Maybe. I know with 90210 what I did. Because I can remember my friend would come over and we would drink and watch it. But The Real World, Andre, was that his name? Like, they're slowly coming to me, the names. But anyway, I watched it. Well, they're doing, like, not a reboot, but they're having them all, like, do, like, a roundtable discussion of, like, topics of stuff that's going on today in our world, and having, like, a real conversation, like, 30 years later. I wonder if it came out in 1991, and so they're doing 30 years later, which would make sense, because that would have been the year after I graduated from high school. So that would be exactly 30 years to the date that it came out. I bet that's what's happening. I bet this summer they're going to have it come out, and it's going to be 30 years to the date of the release, or this spring. I bet that's what they're doing, and I bet it came out in 1991, because I just saw that, and I was like, okay, that's really cool, I want to see that. I also really thought that all of them would go on to do huge things. You know what's so interesting about The Real World? I watched The Real World, man, I bet probably the first 6 or 7 seasons, I, like, religiously watched it. Maybe even more than that. I was really, really into The Real World for a long time. And I'm trying to think of the one where I stopped. Was there one in New Orleans? I feel like maybe that was the one that I stopped on. But, like, the last couple seasons that I saw, like, I mean, I don't know if it's still on, but, like, from a couple years ago, very much looked like Temptation Island. You know, it looked like sit around, get drunk, hook up. And not that that wasn't a part of reality television to begin with. Because it was. I mean, that was always a part of, like, there was always a romantic element to Survivor, or Survivor was one of the very first reality shows I ever watched. But there was always a romantic element to, you know, Survivor. There was always, like, a couple on there, or Big Brother, or The Real World. But more so, back in the day, it was really about people just living together in shared space. You know, Big Brother was that way. The Real World was that way. You know, Survivor was really about surviving. It was, you know, and then it just, all of these shows, I feel like Survivor has kind of stayed pretty true to what it was. I feel like The Amazing Race has stayed true pretty much to what it was. But it's like some of these shows, like The Real World, has gotten so, like, about just, like, hooking up and couples coming out of it. And, you know, it's just, it's not what reality television originated at, which, you know, all things evolve, and I understand that. And maybe it's to, you know, meet a younger generation. I don't really know who the generation is that's into that. But, like, I have a friend of mine, I mean, I haven't talked to him in years, but I follow him still on Instagram and stuff, and he watches all those shows. Like, I remember back in the day, he was, like, obsessed with the Bad Girls Club. And, he watches all of those shows, like, Temptation Island, and all of those shows that kind of look like that. He's always, like, screenshotting stuff off of it, like, while he's watching it, which I think is so hilarious. But so and he's, you know, Alex's age. So, I mean, I think there's a huge audience still for all of that stuff. But then, you know, I'll talk to friends that are my age and ask them what they watch, and they watch a lot of that stuff too. So I just think it depends. I don't think it's any different than the Real Housewives. I mean, and even like the Real Housewives, I mean, now it's talking about like, like Orange County, I mean, was the original one. This has been going on forever. But even like the Real Housewives have changed. Like, I remember when I first started watching that, and it was very different than it is now, you know? And like I said, all things evolve and change, but what other shows did I watch growing up that I loved? I'm trying to think of shows that like I've bought the television series too. Well, Love Boat, and a couple people have sent me seasons of Love Boat, which was really nice. Fantasy Island, I loved Fantasy Island. Sometimes it scared me. Love Boat, Designing Women. Love Boat, Fantasy Island, Designing Women. Roseanne, but I feel like I have to preface this, back in the day. What else? Yeah, a lot of game shows. Little House on the Prairie was huge. I mean, that was just such a staple in my house when I was growing up. The Waltons was too. Before Little House on the Prairie was probably the Waltons. And I always feel like there's shows that I forget. It's where I wish like my mom was around a little bit. When I talk about like who will know my history, that's kind of like my mom would be here, you know, she'd say, well, what about this show? Or what about that show? Like shows I totally don't remember. Oh, Laverne and Shirley. Welcome Back, Kotter. Happy Days. Those were shows from when I was younger. Welcome Back, that my mom and I would watch. Mr. Rogers. I watched Mr. Rogers a lot. You know, it's interesting. I wonder what, like, today, like, when I was younger, like, my mom very, very closely watched, like, what I could see on TV. Like, my parents were not big into censorship. They didn't want me seeing any violence. That was, like, the big deal. But they would like, as long as they talked to me about whatever topics we were watching, like, that was kind of the deal that they had made in raising me. I mean, obviously, I wasn't allowed to see things that were, you know, out there, but when I was really young, my mom said that the shows that I watched were Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. Those were like my two shows. But the other thing is, I didn't watch a lot of TV when I was like a little kid. I just didn't. I think she was trying to figure out what I was doing. She was like looking at me, but she also had her phone held up like this, like she was talking. This always kills me when people drive and they talk like this. I don't know why. I think that's funny. Anyway, I don't, like, maybe I did, but like, I was never just like plopped down in front of a TV to watch TV for hours. Like, that was like a special thing, you know, which is so funny that I'm talking so much about TV, but like, it was a special thing, and like, movies were special. And I can remember when my mom and I would watch a movie, you know, she would, I've told this story on here before, but it's like one of my happiest memories from when I was a kid, you know. My mom was always somebody that was looking for ways to save money, and so she would like buy, you know, clearance candy bars or whatever, but we just didn't go to the movies a lot when I was a kid. I mean, maybe for a special occasion or something, but like, first of all, I remember, I've told this on here before too, my mom would say like, do you want to get a pizza? And I would say, sure. And a pizza, for my mom, getting a pizza was Tombstone pizza, or a frozen pizza, right? I did not even really know, like, getting a pizza when you go, until I went over to other people's houses when I was a little bit older, meant like ordering Pizza Hut. And then I can remember the rare times that my mom would, like, if, you know, the rare times I would have a friend over and we would get a pizza and she would get like 2 tombstones or something, and there would be like, or she'd get like 1, you know, 2 medium tombstones or 1 big tombstone or whatever. There'd be hardly enough to go around. But I remember like a special, this is where I think in creating memories, you don't have to have a lot of money for that, you know? And I think that's where comparison studies come in too. Like, because they don't even have any of their plant stuff out yet. Oh my God, that's crazy. I wonder if they're not going to this year. But anyway, had I never gone, it stopped. Had I never gone to a friend's house or, you know, a friend of my mom's house or something and seen them order 2 or 3, you know, Pizza Hut pizzas, I would never known that there was anything that, like, most people ordered pizza versus just getting like a Tombstone pizza. And actually, I don't think that's something that really changed in my mom's life. My mom was never big on ordering pizza. I can remember till, like, even towards the end, she'd say, it's so expensive to order pizza. And you know what? Truth be told, it is really expensive to order pizza. I mean, sometimes, like, Alex and I'll get, like, each, like, he'll be like, I think that Papa John's is having a deal. And I'm like, those deals are a total scam. Whenever they say they're having a deal, like, 2 large pizzas for, you know, 20 or whatever, by the time you've added on sauces and everything else, you know you're looking at $45, period, end of story. Those pizza places are expensive. I don't care what they say. So, but one of the things that my mom used to do, she would always look for ways to make, like, regular evenings really special. And one of the things that she did was on the weekends, and I don't know, you know, maybe in retrospect, my mom knew, like, I didn't have friends to do stuff with, and I didn't have, like, people to hang out with, and so it was me and her, and maybe, I don't know, you know, we never had that conversation. So, you know, maybe she acted like she didn't know that I was being bullied, but I have to think that she thought that, you know, Peter doesn't have a lot of friends. I have to think she thought that at some point, you know, because she would do things to really try to make, like, days and moments special, you know. And one of the things that she did was we would watch a movie, and, like, we would pick some movie to watch, or let's say if there was going to be a movie on at, like, you know, 8 o'clock. Like, do you remember when you were a kid and they would, like, at Easter time, they would play, like, The Wizard of Oz or Sound of Music? I used to love when they played The Sound of Music on TV. And you knew it was going to come on because you look in the paper, and, like, the paper would say, like, you know, a week ahead of time, and they'd start feeding it out, and you'd be excited to watch whatever movie was coming out. So maybe it was like a movie like that or something, you know, or James Bond movie or something. Some movie that they're going to play, you know, on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever. So, or sometimes I think it was like 3 hours. It'd be like, you know, 8 to 11 or something. But anyway, my mom would buy candy bars, like the big ones, you know, on clearance. And then she would get brown paper lunch bags that you just put, you know, sack lunches in. And she would make popcorn and put it in there. And then she would crush ice in the Cuisinart blender thing. And she would make, like, crushed ice sodas. Oh, it's out of focus. Come on, don't do this tonight. Oh, I hate when it does this. I'm just going to have to turn it off. There is literally no rhyme or reason to why it does that. But anyway, then she would make crushed ice, you know, like sodas. And she would put the cans out with the, you know, the glasses of crushed ice. And she would give me, like, you know, Monopoly money to go through, or regular money or something, and she would stand on one side and she'd be like the concession person, and then I would have to go through and I would have to, like, say what I wanted. And I can remember being like, Mom, I don't want to do this, and she'd say, now come on, and she'd be like, I don't know, I'm not Mom, I just work at the concession stand. And she would play her part, and it would be so fun, you know. And then we would get, like, it just made it that much more special. And then we would go sit on the porch and we would, you know, watch our movie with our popcorn and whatever. It was fun, you know. One of the things I loved about my mom, my dad too, was that they were very involved parents, and not in a way that just, like, academically involved or, like, you know, being involved in sports and all that, which they were that too. But, like, if we were in a pool like, my mom got in the pool. My dad did too. You know, like, they got in the pool and swam around at least a little bit, you know, and I can remember my mom liked to play games in the pool, you know, and, there's this joke that Tanya and I have. So the pool that I have now, okay, our neighbors, like, well, I think all the people that were there when my mom was there are probably gone now, because it was like a lot of older people. But my mom would be like, because my mom liked to play games in the pool and stuff, so even when I was, you know, 35 or 30, my mom would be like, come on, let's play, you know, chicken in the pool or whatever. Like, where you grab your leg and you bounce and you try to pull the other person in. So the neighbors at the time, like, my mom would get in the pool and she would swim laps and stuff. And she would, like, this is so funny, because every once in a while, Tanya and I will just throw this line out. They would get, like, real frustrated, like, with my mom, you know, like, they just want to stand on the side of the pool, very much like what I like to do today. That's not true. I actually do kind of swim in the pool and stuff, but it just depends on the day. But I like to sit on the side of the pool and talk to my neighbors with my coffee today. I'm like, hi, how are you doing? It's good to see you. Your yard looks great. You know, all of that. I do all that. But my mom would go up there and she'd want to swim laps. And of course, you know, the pool is so small. It's like just like this little neighborhood pool. And so she would swim, and she would go and do the backstroke. This one time, Tanya and I were up there with her, and my mom is doing, there's like people in the pool, and my mom is swimming right through the people. And she goes, as she's swimming, she's saying out loud, just doing the backstroke, folks, just doing the backstroke. And she's swimming like right through these people. Because she was like, oh, it's my pool too, and if I want to do the backstroke, I'm going to do the backstroke. So every once in a while, Tanya and I will say to each other, we'll be like, just doing the backstroke, folks, just doing the backstroke. Isn't that so funny? I just drove by Starbucks, and I have to tell you, my days are so thrown off from doing vlogs during the day, or doing them at night, or doing them whenever, I don't even know, that I'm like, is coffee getting ready to open? Because I could really have some coffee about right now. Oh my gosh. Good times growing up. I was thinking about my dad's boat today, because he used to have this handheld he used to have this handheld like radio. This guy just looked over at me, and then he like smiled, and so I smiled back at him, and then I started laughing. So my dad used to have this handheld radio, and he would use, I was kind of scared to look back over, honestly. It was like, well, maybe he's a serial killer. This is exactly what happened, okay? I looked over at him, and he was looking straight, he was like right at me like that, and then and then I went, and he smiled back at me, and then he started laughing, and I was like, okay, so I started laughing. Anyway, I should do it again and see if it happens again. They'll be like, who are you talking to? I'm talking to my friends, don't worry about it. Anyway, my dad had this bungee cord, this old radio tape. He is totally staring at me. It's making me nervous. Stop looking at me, please. Is he still looking at me? No. Anyway. Okay, so my dad had this tape player. It was like, you know, it wasn't like a heavy duty one or anything like that, but it was like, you know, one that you carry like this with a handle on it. You guys, you know what I'm talking about? It has like a radio, like a turn dial radio on it. You guys are like, you're so old, Peter. I know, but it had like a turn dial radio on it, and then it also had like a tape cassette, right? So he would put a bungee cord, and he would like loop it through the handle and then like around like something on the boat, so that it would just like sway and smack and whatever when you were out on the lake, you know, and going from this way to that. Have you ever been on a sailboat? It's not smooth. Like, I think people think it's, I mean, when you're sailing and when you have like, you know, like great wind for like a moment, it's good. But if you change like, what's it called? I can't even remember now. It's been so long since I sailed. But if you winch the knots and all that kind of stuff, you know, and change the direction, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, it's like, and my dad's boat was like a bigger boat. So it was like, I mean, it took, you know, he could run the boat by himself. I don't know how. Like, he would go from Saugatuck, Michigan to Chicago in like the middle of a storm. And I don't know how he did it. I mean, Lake Michigan can get really treacherous out there sometimes. But anyway, my dad is like one of those people that's like literally, I have no fear. Is like, he lives by, I have no fear. He just is unafraid of anything. And, like, he just doesn't really ever, nothing like scares him whatsoever. And, he's been in so many situations where like, you would think like most people would be scared. My dad was camping. He used to go camping in Banff. I think it's Alberta, Canada. And he woke up in the middle of the night by himself in a tent, snow everywhere, out in the middle of nowhere of the Canadian Rockies, to like this 9 or 10, I think it was like a 9-foot like bear that had gotten his pack right outside of his tent that has food in it, and had torn it about. He was like 2 or 3 days from like going down to where the food, like where like the town was, or something like that. 2 days. And this bear, like, first of all, this bear is like looking at him, okay, and took all of his food, took his whole pack with him. And so my dad has no pack, has nothing, and is left out there. And this bear almost like tore him to pieces. My dad wasn't scared. He's had a lot of situations like that. And I'm just like, really, Dad? You really weren't scared? And he's like, what's to be scared of? We all have a day. That's like my sponsor always says that. We all have an expiration date. I hate when she says that. But I mean, it's the truth, but I mean, I guess I kind of live by that to some degree. It's like, you know, I'm not in the mood to have like a really sad vlog tonight, but I think it's true, you know what I mean? That we all know that we're not going to be, there's going to be a day that we're not here anymore, and so we should probably live to the best of our ability, you know? I really do believe that. And it was interesting at the end of Hell in the Heartland, the documentary about Abby Freeman and Lori Bible, the missing girls that Jax Miller wrote about. They interview throughout the course of the documentary one of their friends from high school. It's now, you know, it's been 18 years or whatever, so she's like in her mid-30s, and or early 30s. And they said, how do you think that we should remember her? Jax asks her something like, how do you think we should remember her, or something, remember them, or something like that. And she said, I think we should remember them as like they were such a source of light. And she was like, but you know, they don't have the chance to live anymore. Like they never got the chance to live a life. So we should live a life for them, like a right life. Like we should live a right life for them, you know? And I think that's so true for any of us, you know? If you need motivation for why to be a good person and why to live a right life, like, don't you think that the majority of people that are gone from this planet and don't have that opportunity anymore, like, if they were given that opportunity again to come back here, right? Like, very much like, you know, Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. I keep on referring to that story. I don't know why. That story, watch, something's going to come out about A Christmas Carol. Because whenever I do that, that's like my psychic brain tuning into something. I've talked about Marley and the ghost and all this. Something about The Christmas Carol is going to come out. Trust me, okay? I've been saying something about it for the last couple days. It's like, keeps on coming up. But it very much is the story of A Christmas Carol, you know? It's very much this idea of, like, second and third and fifth chances. But I think, like, hold on a second, let me fix this. I think most people, given the opportunity to, like, if they had passed away, to come back and, like, would you come back and just live this life of just total disregard for people and selfishness? Or would you try to live a right life and be a better person? Don't you think most people would say, well, I would definitely take the path of being a better person and treating people well? Well, if that's the case, we don't have to wait until we come back, that we may never come back. You know, we don't know, but, you know, we don't have to wait for that. We can start living right lives today. And I loved that she said that. I thought it's such a fantastic message in there, you know, that we can, because they can't. It's like my friend and I, whose mom passed, or mom took her life like a year and a half before my mom passed away. You know, both of our moms used to dance in the kitchen. And one of the things that we always say is dance in the kitchen, because our moms can't do that anymore, you know? And I think the opportunity to live a good, bright life, you know, is up to us. And I loved that she said that in there. I think we think about so many things. I think we think about our opinions and putting so much time and energy and effort into things, right? Like our opinion about TV shows, or opinion about social media things, or our opinions about, you know, things that happen locally, like in our neighborhood. What's that thing that all my friends are like obsessed with? What's it called? Back in the day, there used to be a column in the newspaper, and it was called Let It Out, and you could write in there and be like, Mrs. Jones on 3rd Street drives me crazy because she lets her dog out and it just barks all day long. But what's it called? Something neighborhood. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, all of my friends are on it, and they just howl and laugh. I follow the Twitter, the best of whatever it's called, but anyway, you know, it's like we have all these opinions about this and all these opinions about everything that happens in the world, but it's like, I'm such a believer that change starts within us, each ourselves, and like the ability to be a better person is within us. And we can't change other people, you know? Yeah, we can sit and we can talk about it, and we can, you know, say like, well, this needs to change, and that needs to change, and this needs to change, and we're probably right, you know? There's a lot of things in the world that need to change, definitely. But at the same time, change starts with us. Change starts within us. And you know, I think one of the things that has been abundantly clear to me since I've been sober is I don't have a lot of ability to change other people, places, and things, but I do have the ability to change myself. I swear to God, I looked up and I thought the moon is bright tonight, and you guys, it's the lamp, the street lamp. I'm losing my mind. Oh my gosh. But I also think that it's like this continual journey, you know, like a continuous journey. I don't think it's something that it's just like a one and done. Like, I think that every day that we wake up, we have to ask ourselves that question, like, what can I do today? Not what did I do yesterday or what am I going to do tomorrow, but what can I do today to be the best version of myself, you know? How can I be nicer to those around me? How can I be kinder to those around me, you know? And I ask myself that a lot, you know? The reality is, for me, I feel better when I am a nicer person to those around me, and I'm being the best version of myself that I can be. I really do feel better, you know? I remember years and years and years ago, this Oprah that I saw, and, you know, at that time, it was really popular on, like, Maury and Jerry Springer and all those shows, Dr. Phil, that they would have, like, problem kids on, you know, problem teens that were going to boot camps. Remember, Dr. Phil would always sit and he could be like, and you're going to boot camp. Absolutely, Oprah. Now, Sally, tell me, how does it feel when your daughter calls you those names? She kicks down your bedroom door, she gets in your purse, and she takes $20, and she goes up the street, she buys some marijuana. Tell me, Sally Joe, how does that feel? We teach people how to treat us, see? But anyway, I forgot that I used to do the Dr. Phil impression. Absolutely open. I really did forget that until right now. Do you guys remember I used to do that in my drama videos? But Oprah did this one video. You know, everybody was doing it. The Tyras, the Jenny Jones back in the day, the Ricky Lakes, the Geraldos, the who else had talk shows back in the day? Phil Donahue. God, I loved Phil Donahue back in the day. He and Oprah were like, they ran everything. This was long before Ellen, you know. And what was the other one? What was she? The comedian? Why can't I think of her name? Oh, I just saw a picture of her tonight with this DJ here in Indianapolis that I know. She's not like a DJ, like she's like a radio DJ. She's really famous here in town. And I saw a picture. She had a picture up on her Instagram. What is that woman's name? Why can't I not think of her? Do you guys know, with the blonde hair? She's real funny. Anyway, she had a talk show, didn't she, for a long time? Yeah. But anyway, I used to watch all those talk shows, you know, and like Dr. Phil and Phil Donahue especially would, like, you know, send them to like boot camps and stuff, and, you know, whatever. I can remember Dr. Phil had like some guy on, and he was like from one of these boot camps, and anyway. So there was a lot of focus on, you know, like problematic like teens at that time. And Oprah did this show on really like good kids that just make good choices. And I remember she had this girl on. This girl was like absolutely beautiful. And she was like 17, and she lived with her grandparents. I mean, she had like a tough story. I remember like her parents, like one was in prison and the other one had died, both from like drug situations. And she lived with her grandparents, and her grandparents were elderly, and she took care of them. And she worked, like, she went to school, and she got like a 4.5 out of 4. Like, she got like, because her grades were so good, and she was taking weighted like AP classes, like accelerated classes, she was getting like a 4 or 5 out of 4 credits. She gotten accepted to like the college of her choice already, and gotten all these scholarships. She got like citizenships awards. She did all this community service, and she worked on top of it. And I remember that, maybe I'm like merging two girls together, because there was like this one girl that Oprah asked, but they were very similar. All of the kids on the panel like really were like exceptionally, and it wasn't just they got good grades. It was that they just were really like neat human beings, you know, like making good choices and just being like really good people. And they all did community service even though they didn't have to, and they all like worked and were paying for their own stuff. And I remember she asked this one girl, she said, now, do you go to parties and like drink and smoke marijuana? And she was like, no. And she was like, so like if your friend, she said somehow a bonfire came up, and she said, so like if your friends are having a bonfire on a Friday night, you don't go? And she's like, I go. She was like, but I don't drink and I don't smoke marijuana. And I remember thinking to myself, yeah, right. Yeah, right. And she was like, so what do you do like when you have to go home for curfew? And she's like, I go home for curfew. And she was like, well, what time's your curfew? And her curfew was something like, it was early. It was like 10 or 10:30 or something like that. And she was like, I just go home and I leave. And Oprah looked at her and she said, why? And the girl looked at her and she goes, why what? And she goes, why do you make good choices? And the girl looked at Oprah like it was the craziest question in the entire world. I'll never forget this. I can see the look on her face. And she said, because it's easier. And they have this conversation about, like, it's just easier to do the right thing. Like, when you're, you know, when you're not, like, you're constantly, like, I can remember back in the day getting into trouble with, you know, like, my drinking and my using, and I was constantly, like, it was, like, so much work and effort, right? To, you know, and it was just, and it's so much, like, I can remember that was what I felt at 6 months sober when I stood in that parking lot. I felt peace of mind, like, oh God, this is so much easier, you know? People aren't worried about me. People aren't yelling at me. People aren't, you know, like, are you still alive? This, that, you know? People knew that I was okay. I knew that I was okay, and it was easier. So it is easier to wake up every day and just do the right thing and to be a good person. And, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she's such a fantastic person. She's such a good person. She's constantly, like, looking for what she can do for other people and whatever. And she was kind of beating herself up on the phone, and because she's single, and she was like, you know, she was like, I was thinking to myself, well, she works with one volunteer organization, and she has forever. And she was saying that they, like, other volunteer places, she works with, like, the homeless, and she was talking about how other homeless organizations outsource them. And so she was like, you know, as I was sitting there and I was, like, seeing these things go off to these different, you know, homeless places, I was like, I need to get more involved. Like, I'm single. Like, I don't, like, you know, I should be doing this, like, 3 nights a week, okay? Now, mind you, my friend is not just somebody that volunteers once a month, okay? She volunteers every week for an entire 8-hour shift. She, not only that, but is, like, almost, like, subservient to her parents. She's so fantastic to them. She's so good to her sister and to her cousins. To her aunt, she is always constantly, like, making meals, full meals, and taking them over there. You know, during this whole COVID situation, she was kind of like the ringleader of making sure that everybody was okay and that everybody had everything they needed. And not because of any pats on the back, because guaranteed she never gets them, but because that is who she is as a person. Not on top of that, she owns her own business, works full time, okay? You know, and it's just like she does all of these things. And I said to her on the phone today, she's like, I feel like she was kind of beating herself up. When did I talk to her? Was it yesterday? What is today? Saturday. It was yesterday. She was kind of beating herself up, and she was like, I just feel like there's other organizations I could be working for too. She's like, I mean, she kept on saying, like, I'm single, like I have all this time. I said, listen, I said, I don't know what you're going for, if you're going for sainthood here, but, like, you are, like, one of the most amazing people that I know. Like, if you want to do the volunteer work, do the volunteer work, but stop beating yourself up, right? Like, you are probably one of the best top 2 or 3 people I've ever, I said, I, like, don't do, and listen, I'm not someone to come on here and sing my praises, but I'll just say, y'all don't know what I do, okay? So just to put that out there. But I said to her, I said, you know, like, I pale in comparison to all of the boards that you sit on and the things that you do and the volunteer service that you do, you know, and those are things that are very important to my husband and I, you know, and I'm not a believer that, you know, you talk about any of that kind of stuff. I believe that you, like, I mean, between she and I as friends talking about it, but, like, I don't believe you talk about that stuff, and you know, like, it is such a turnoff to me when I see, like, I don't really even get as heated about it in my drama videos as I could, but it is such a turnoff to me when I see these influencers, like, publicly put up how much they have cash apped somebody. Or when they will put a receipt up about how much they tipped somebody. Or that they'll show that they picked up somebody's tab or something. I'm like, well, first of all, I don't know. I just, like, to me, that I don't understand why we do that. Like, my father is one of the most fantastic people in this world, and I probably know 5% of what he's done for other people. He doesn't talk about what he does about other people. And he taught me, you don't talk about what you do for other people. You just do it because it's the right thing to do. And you do it because you try to be a good person and put that kind of energy out there in the world, you know? And not because it'll come back to you, but just because it's the right thing to do. And I really feel like that's been missed, you know? It's like... And like I said, I'm no saint, okay, at all. I gotta get up every morning and ask myself the same question. What can I do to be a better version of myself? What can I do to, you know, be better? But like I said, you know, we all have an expiration date, and there's gonna be a date that we're not here anymore, you know? And what are we doing with our lives? And what do we want our lives to speak of? You know, when I am like in selfishness and in my head, for me to get out of myself, I have to help others and be of service to others. And you know, the truth is this, is that when I am, whether it's just, and being of, like I was telling my friend this, I said, I think that you think being of service to others means going and dedicating 24 hours of, you know, volunteer work, because that's what she loves to do, and she's great at it, right? But, you know, volunteer or being of service to others is picking up a phone and just calling somebody. Like I say on here every single day, most importantly, let somebody know how much they mean to you. That's being of service. Practicing random acts of kindness and not telling anyone. That's being of service. Writing a postcard to somebody, letting them know that they matter to somebody. That's being of service. Giving somebody a parking space that they maybe want or need more than you. That's being of service. Opening a door for somebody. That's being of service. You know? Leaving a couple extra dollars when you tip somebody. Why? Because, you know, it's not gonna make, it's just not gonna make that big of a deal to you either. And then maybe it'll make their night. Maybe they've had a bad day. That's being of service. And there's a million ways that we can be of service to other people. That doesn't mean that we have to go join some organization, you know? Just making somebody's life a little bit brighter is a big part of that. So, I think it's something that we have to all think about. And, like, these are things that I have to be reminded of on a daily basis. You know, I don't claim to have it all figured out, and I don't claim to be the best version of this by any means whatsoever. I'm forever a work in progress, you know? But I know that I want to be that. I know that I feel better when I'm aiming towards that, you know? All right, you guys, listen, I'm going to get off here now, and I am going to go and listen to my audiobook, Betwixt by Dorinda Jones, because it is so good. And I may finish it tonight. I don't know. We'll see. So, anyway, it's getting a little late, but I may finish it tonight. So, anyway, I hope that you guys are having an amazing Sunday. Is it about to stop, or do I have time left? Okay. Most importantly, make sure that you reach out to somebody and let them know how much they mean to you. Like I also say, practice random acts of kindness, but like I also always say, don't tell any, like I also always say, don't tell any, I practice random acts of kindness, but also like I always say, don't tell anyone. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. Put some goodness, kindness, love, compassion, faith, forgiveness, amazement, wonder, awe, tolerance, hope, courage, and most importantly, love out there into the world. And like it says in the 4 agreements, always lead with love. If nobody else has told you this today, I love you. Have an amazing Sunday. Refresh your day. Refresh yourself for the week ahead. I love you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye. Love ya!